In other words, this guy's going to come in and he's going to want to change all kinds of things. Now, it says also that all of this he will be permitted to do because it will be given totally into his hands for 3.5 years. Before we leave chapter 7, I've noted a couple of things. Let's just kind of summarize. The Antichrist arises after 10 nations come up out of the ruins of the Roman Empire. He is different than all of the other rulers. He will subdue 3 of the 10 leaders to take over the 10 nations. He makes great boasts. And it's a very interesting thing I noticed here. In chapter 7, verse 8, get that for a second. Daniel 7, verse 8. While I was contemplating the horns, here's talking about the symbols of the 10 nations. Behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. Behold, his horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great things. So here it tells us again he's going to have an incredible speaking ability, but I noticed that it calls him the little horn. And then I contrast that with what it says in verse 20, where Daniel asked the revealing angel about what all the things he saw meant, the symbols. He says he wanted to know the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of them fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth uttering great things, which was larger in appearance than its associates. So I went to the Hebrew and looked that up. How can it be the little horn and yet look larger in appearance? And I found that the word used, larger, means, in some cases, especially when it's used in connection with the man's characteristics, it means stronger. He was much stronger in his appearance than any of the other leaders. A tremendous personal magnetism and power. And noted also he goes to war with the saints who are the believers of the tribulation. Now, I want to make it clear, and you will learn this as we go through the rest of the study. Whenever you see the word saint, don't automatically think it's a believer of the church. The word saint is applied to believers of any time. When it talks about he'll go to war against the saints, we're going to see it's not believers in the church. You won't be here. We'll learn about that in the ultimate trip. But it's talking about those who believe during the 7 final years just before Christ returns. That period we call the tribulation. A saint, the word simply means to be set apart to God. A saint is a believer of any time. So he's going to war against believers. Now look with me at chapter 8, verse 23. Here again, Daniel is given more revelation about the successive world empires that would come. He even names Babylon in the first part, and then he says they would be destroyed by Media-Persia, verse 20. The Media-Persians would be destroyed by Greece and its first king, verse 21 and 22. And it talks about the division of Alexander's kingdom into 4 parts. And then, in verse 23, it leaps over a long period of time again. In Bible prophecy, it's really exciting to study it because you have to carefully look at the context every time. Because often God will be predicting about one thing, and then he'll leap over a long period of history and predict something else. Well, that's the case here in verse 23. In the latter period, so that's your key right there. In the latter period of their rule, that is, of all of these other world empires, when the transgressors have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. The word insolent literally, it's in Hebrew in literal word, strong face. He will be of strong face and skilled in intrigue. But the idiom means this. He is going to have formidable personal presence. Have you ever sought to deal with someone that when you meet them, when they come in the room tilts? I mean, you know, they have such personal, a kind of a personal ingrained confidence and a sense of authority that just exudes out of their pores, that you know you're going to have one heck of a time dealing with this person. I've run into some like that, and apart from the Lord, I would say, I want out of here. Because there's such a thing as having a tremendous projection of personal power. And that's what this means. He will have this appearance of tremendous personal power. And no one's going to be able to stand up against him in trying to out-negotiate him or deal with him. Now, it also says he will be skilled in intrigue. So I had to look up each one of these words in the original Hebrew. He's going to be skilled in the words hiraka. It means skilled in riddles, enigmatic sayings, and difficult things. But as I looked at it more carefully, it means perplexing sayings. In other words, he is going to be a master, let's put it in today's language, a master of doublespeak. You understand that? That's what it would mean today. He'll be the ultimate doublespeak, being able to put things in such a way that he can mesmerize people, make them think he means one thing, he means another. He's the ultimate politician, in other words. Verse 24, his power will be mighty. Hebrew word mighty means almost infinite power. His power will be awesome. He's going to have tremendous power. In a moment, when we get to Revelation 13, we'll see why. But not by his own power. Well, if it's not by his own power, where's it coming from? Satan himself. And it says, and he will destroy to an extraordinary degree. Actually, it means he will destroy in an extraordinary manner. In other words, here's a person that will be able to corrupt and destroy before people know what is happening. Now, the next statement is that says he will cause deceit to succeed by his influence. And the word means here he will have extraordinary cunning, and he will be able to cause deception to reach a tremendous level of persuasiveness because of his influence. We had an example in history. In fact, when I study the Antichrist, that's why I call this the future Führer. We've had a kind of a great historical lesson in the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler. I've always liked to study the rise and the life of Adolf Hitler because he is an incredible example. Of course, he's like a choir boy compared to this one that's coming, but he is one to teach a lesson of how this kind of person can wield such authority and power. Now think of it for a minute. Here's a man that in World War I was a corporal. He was not well educated. He was sort of an out-of-work artist and a paper hanger.